Your image. Oh.
Okay, there you go.
It's live. You are live now. Okay, all right. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Richard Wee from Richard Wee Chambers. Welcome to the RWC webinar series, our continuing series of webinar for the community. For today's webinar, we are going to address a particular topic, which is the issue of cycling, recreational cycling particularly. And with me today, I have two distinguished gentlemen who I am very honored to be able to call as my friends. Firstly is Ahmad Arif Astaman, who is the current president of the Kuala Lumpur Cycling Federation. Welcome aboard,
Thank
Arif.
you. Thanks very much for having me, Rick.
Thanks for agreeing the short notice.
No problem. No problem. It's a pleasure.
The other fella we have here is a Superman. He's a Superman. So I've been following him for years, and I'm very fortunate not only to know him, but I also friends with his wife, who's a netball player for the Bar Council, and he's none other than Encik Ramzul, who is the current president of the Malaysian Triathlon. Yeah, welcome aboard, Ramzul.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yep,
Thank
you.
Not really a Superman.
almost there.
Oh, don't worry, Rick. We disagree. We agree that he is Superman.
Yeah. So those of you who follow Ramzul's social media, you will see that he punishes himself to the point of perfection, where he can cycle, swim, and run very fast. So well done to you, bro. Quite inspiring for many of us.
Thank you.
So for today's topic, let me set the tone. We have 1 hour. This discussion today is not for us to give a definitive answer. This is not for take notes. This is what you do, left, right. You know, it's not that kind of webinar. But we are trying to search for the answer. We are trying to search for a solution. So we invited these two gentlemen because of their unique background. Encik Arif, of course, obviously being a office bearer of a specific association about cycling, will bring to the table his unique experiences and knowledge about the cycling regulation, etc. And then Ramzul, other than being an office bearer himself, he himself is an athlete. So I would like to invite him later to share his concerns and his observation on how he handled cycling on the road. Now, before we continue, I do want to have a shout out to my friend, Dato' Riza Ghazi, who's a lawyer from the firm of Riza and Richard. He was the one who offered this idea to hold this talk. And he was supposed to join us as a speaker today, but he's unable to attend. So so now I'm taking over as the legal speaker, other than being the moderator. Right. So without further ado, the way we're going to do this webinar is going to be like a Q&A, discussion, chit-chat, dialogue way. This is not a, Mr. Ramzul's talk for 20 minutes, Arif talk, it's not the kind of webinar. We're going to have a chat and dialogue. So the first question I would like to just pose to, particularly to Arif. Oh, no, in fact, before that, can I invite the two of you to introduce yourself? Arif?
Hi. Thanks very much, Rick. My name is Arif Astaman. I'm currently the president of the Kuala Lumpur Cycling Association and council member of the Malaysian National Cycling Federation. I've been a cyclist since I was about 14 years old, but I got serious and involved with the association only about 3 years ago. But my involvement with cycling is not just limited to being a recreational cyclist. I'm also previously an organizer of cycling events. I've done the Jelajah Malaysia, the Tour de Langkawi, and most recently the Tour of Peninsula.
Well done.
Yeah.
So
trying my best.
You got the right man.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. And I say hopefully at the end of this session, we give our cyclist friends an impetus towards a particular roadmap for solution. I think we are all concerned. Can we cycle on the road? Can we cycle on the highway? What can we do? What about insurance issues, which I intend to address later? So thanks for introducing yourself, Arif.
No problem.
And my brother, Ramzul, all yours, Ramzul.
Thank you, Rick. Again, thank you for having me on the session. I think Rick's introduction just now really put me under tremendous pressure. I'm not really a super fast athlete. On the contrary, I'm very slow. right? But I love the sport, right? I love cycling. I cycle almost every week, almost every weekend. So this is really a topic that is very close to my heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Thanks.
full name is Ramzul Hakim Ramli, and you can call me Ramzul. I'm currently the president for Malaysia Triathlon. Right, we are the National Federation for multi-sports such as triathlon, duathlon, and so on. Okay, again, thank you for having me. Thank you for our audience today who are tuning in. Who are having interest in this subject. Over to you, Rick.
Yep, thank you. In fact, I already see quite a number of my friends have logged on the page. So normally this webinar, but as we go along, more and more people will watch. And because it's broadcast live on Facebook, the video will remain on Facebook. You'll be surprised later on in the evening when more and more people stumble upon the video, they'll watch it, then the viewership normally will go up. But anyway, the idea is for us to try and offer some verbal thoughts here. Now, gentlemen, as we know, let's address the case on point. Kenapalah kita berjumpa hari ini? Kenapalah kita berbincang hari ini? So the elephant in the room here today is about whether or not a cyclist can cycle on the highway. That is the specific question. But there's a larger picture. Where exactly can we cycle? I think that is a larger picture. Being targeting only the highway may not necessarily be fair, both to the cyclist and the highway operator. But where can we cycle? So maybe Arif, maybe to share some of your observation. This is more of observation. I don't want people to say, oh, that he said that, so that's his opinion. Maybe you share your observation as president about this area. All yours, Arif.
Okay, thank you, Rick. To begin with, our situation is such that this was just confirmed by the JPJ just a couple of days ago when I attended an engagement session with the JPJ regarding this issue. We are actually allowed to cycle absolutely everywhere where we are not prohibited from cycling. That's number one. Okay, so if the road exists and there is no prohibition on cycling on that particular road, then we are allowed. This is from JPJ enforcement themselves. So on that part, we are following the practice which is standard across the world under the Vienna Convention on Road Traffic, I believe, in which cyclists are acknowledged as users of the road. Okay, we are acknowledged as users of the road. But in Malaysia, as you rightfully mentioned just now, we also have a specific section in the Road Transport Act which says that certain types of vehicles can be prohibited from certain types of roads. That's a power of the government, and that power has in fact been exercised. As it is right now, we are not allowed to cycle on highways. All right, but there is a gray area here. The gray area is because there are 4 specific roads in which a gazette has actually been issued, in which there is a piece of law that says the following activities are prohibited on this highway. The top one is bicycling, and the second one is electric bicycle. This one I have cited myself. But at the same time, we have also noted that the Bukit Aman Traffic Enforcement and Investigations Department has also issued a statement together with the Malaysian Highways Board, saying that, in general, as a matter of principle, we are not allowed to go on highways, but every other road, the federal road, municipal road, and state roads, we are allowed to be as a road user. But we remain subject under Section 79 sub 2 of the Road Transport Act to all traffic laws. So when we are a road user, right, we have to be subject to traffic laws just like other vehicles, other drivers and other users of the road, including pedestrians for that matter. So, in short, to answer your question, we are allowed to cycle everywhere where we're not prohibited. The law provides for a potential prohibition, and in 4 instances, we have been prohibited as cyclists to go on 4 roads, but there is a gray area in which the police as well as the highway authority has said that, okay, you cannot go to all highways, but that has not been gazetted, which makes it a gray area in my book. So personally, from an anecdotal evidence kind of thing, I have never cycled on a highway where there has been no separation between the cyclist and the main body of traffic. And even when we do races, etc., we the UCI regulations, the International Cycling Union regulations require that we close the road completely, whether it's a full closure or a rolling closure. But if it's not able to be closed, then you cannot hold the race. Yeah, it's a non-negotiable thing for professional athletes. It's a non-negotiable thing. It doesn't matter what type of road it is. But what it has to have is full closure with absolutely no sharing on the road. For races lah. There you go.
Well, maybe one day, I'm just speaking as a hopeful Malaysians, that we will have not only a dedicated bicycle lane like we have in Kuala Lumpur, but the lanes are properly demarcated with maybe some separated tiles and whatever.
Physical separation. I mean, sometimes when you talk about physical separation in the cycle lanes, there have been studies in the UK where if the separation is not well thought of enough, it actually makes a false sense of security for the cyclist, because the cyclist is confident, I'm in a cycle lane. But because there's no actual physical separation, as we do experience it in Kuala Lumpur from time to time, people park in the cycle lane. Motorcycles use the cycling lane, and it forces the cyclist to join the main body of traffic to avoid the hazard that is on the cycling lane.
Correct.
So first step is to acknowledge that cyclists have a right to be on the road, unless we are prohibited from being there. And secondly is to develop specific infrastructure for the cyclists to make it safer for both the cyclists as well as the other road users. Because when you create a separated lane, it's not just us who is going to be safer, it's also going to be the other road users, because then they don't have to think about us getting in their lane anymore.
Before I go to Ramzul, very quick shotgun question to you. What about for Klang Valley cyclists? What about places like Jandabai and Mori, where clearly you cannot build a side lane? I suppose there is a cycle at your risk, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's classified as as either a federal road or a state road or a municipal road. And typically, you would be surprised actually. My son used to go to school in Kuala Selangor, and in front of his school in Kuala Selangor, where you don't really expect there to be a lot of cyclists, there is actually a dedicated cycling lane that's been properly painted blue, etc. You would be very surprised as to the ingenuity and the innovation, as well as the openness of our more rural PBTs. But this one can only come from the sheer number of cyclists and the farsightedness of the local people. But it's there in Kuala Selangor. I was very surprised the first time I saw it. I thought, hey, this is fantastic. They have cycling lanes in Kuala Selangor, which is something that
don't play.
Exactly. It can be done. The roads are, I think, wide enough. The roads are wide enough.
So Ramzul, we heard from the observation of office bearer of a cycling association. This is his observation, and I think I share Arif's observation also, that it seems that we can cycle anywhere unless the law say you cannot cycle there. That is the observation. And so for you, Ramzul, other than from your office bearer's point of view, when you perhaps have to address your mind to these issues, when you yourself are cycling, how do you address these issues of regulation and rules before you decide? Say tomorrow you said, I want to go and cycle at this place. So what goes in your mind before you choose that place?
Okay, for me, number one priority for all cyclists should be on safety. Yeah, we really need to put a priority on safety, and this is even before you start cycling. So it starts from the night before. For example, you have to really decide where you want to cycle, plan your route properly. If you are going to someplace new, make sure you ask someone who has gone through that route before, or you can just check the map, right? So you really need proper planning and decide, okay, whether or not that route, are you going to pass through a highway? Are you going to, pass somewhere very heavy traffic and so on? So that really, the planning is very important before even you start cycling, right? And then on the day itself, right? And then before that, you have to make sure that your bike is in tip-top condition. I think I've seen it many times. Many cyclists, they don't service their bikes, having puncture is really an accident, but having the chain might be broken, in the middle of a ride. So these are the things that really you can do before your ride. And then in the morning before the ride, one good practice to have is really to conduct some sort of like a safety briefing for your group, right? So I think this is, I've seen it, being practiced now many times with many groups, right? This is really something that we can adopt with other groups as well, right? So during this short safety briefing before you start, normally the captain or the so-called ride leader would inform the cyclists in the group, or we are going from here to here, how far we are going, and so on. Please, as a good practice, try to include elements of safety, just a reminder for everyone. For example, make sure you don't follow someone in front of you too closely. Too closely. Do not half wheel. Make sure your handlebar to handlebar are parallel to each other if you're riding in two lines, and so on, right? So this is really the basic of a cyclist, that the basic skills that you need. And then what we are doing really is we want to reduce the risk of injuries and accidents to as low as reasonably possible, right? So this is why we are doing this. We are having this briefing before the ride. You please wear something bright. Your jersey do not wear, if you're riding at night, do not wear black, for example.
Don't wear black,
So have blinkers, have lights, and make sure you pointed to the holes on the road. Those are really the things that we can do as cyclists in order to, again, as I mentioned earlier, to reduce our risk and accidents to as low as reasonably possible, right? Personally, when I'm training for my Ironman, right, I do this on my own as well, right? I normally plan where I want to go, right, how long I'm doing for that day, and I try to minimize any risk, to me, any risk that an accident will happen to me, right? For example, I try to avoid the highways, when I come to a major intersection, I would slow down, I sign to people, sign to other cyclists. Even though I come across another group, a different group, I say that I'm in front of them, right? I will still, still give signs to them, tell there's a car coming. And to answer your question, your shotgun question to Arif, from my perspective, right, in areas like Janda Baik, I've been to Janda Baik a couple of times, and you are right, they are really narrow. There's no way you can put a
very narrow.
Some definitely.
How we can reduce the risk of accidents there as a cyclist, right? When you ride there, have common sense. Do not go 2x2. Ride as a single file. The problem with riding a single file, if you are riding in a group, the file could be too long. Right? It's still too long. You say that you have 20 in a group, everyone riding in a single file, it will be too long. What you can do, for example, if you see there's a car at the back waiting for waiting to overtake your group, you can help the car by telling the people in front of you there's a car at the back, and the guy at the front can be like a traffic controller. See, is there any car coming from in front or not, from the opposite side? And then if the course is clear for that car to overtake, then we can give them sign. It's safe to overtake. So these are really that we can do to minimize the risk of accidents happening, right? I think in this issue, we do need like a holistic approach. Not only the cyclists, the authorities also must play their role in coming up with the best laws and so on. We also need better infrastructure and so on, which could be, be years coming if we want to have everything in place already at the time, right? But what we can immediately as a cyclist, to really put safety first, put safety as priority, right? And do these things, these common things. If you are an experienced cyclist, I'm sure this is not new things to you. Please replicate this, do this before your ride, during your rides, and more importantly, we need to educate the newer ones, the newbies. When they just started, tell them this is what you should need to do when you just started. So we need to really kongsi the ilmu to this new group, right? So
well said. I love your tips. It sounds simple but logical, and sometimes we forget, right? But I'll say this, and I'm sure both of you will agree with this idea that other than focusing heavily on the cyclists, which I've noticed has been happening for quite some time. I think the missing focus is actually on the other road users. I think there's a lack of, Malaysia's favorite word is lack of education. I don't know why people like the word, but I'll say it here. It's a lack of education in educating the other road users that, look, that bicycle fella is not your enemy. You don't have to drive your vehicle so close to that fella that you want to bang into him. And no matter how rush you are, killing another person on the road is not the solution. You know.
In fact, Rick, a lot of people also tend to forget that while the road bike users tend to be the most visible because they're the most flashy, they're the ones who go really the fastest. But there are also other categories of cyclists. You know, cyclists is not just one pukul rata category, everybody on a road bike.
Betul.
I don't ride road bikes. I have a mountain bike which I ride on the road. My wife has a folding bike which she rides on the road. You know, and all of my kids have their own bikes, and none of it are road bikes. I just bought a road bike, in fact, 2 days ago. That one, my first ever road bike. You know, so I am considered a newbie roadie, but an experienced cyclist on public roads. You know, so when we try and make certain laws or certain policies, for example, I think people in the corridors of power, for lack of a better description, they should be aware that there is not only one group of cyclists, there is not only one type of bike on the road, you know. So for the average mountain biker, I have kakis who are, you know, tegar punya downhill MTBs, you know, my friends over at Scarfox in Bukit Dinding. That's all they do. They have a truck to carry their bike up to the top of Bukit Dinding, and then they whack down 1.6 kilometers, you know, because they like that thrill of going down. I have my friends in Bukit Kiara who are the BMX fellas. They are looking for a different type of support and a different type of facilitation from the law, from KBS, from everybody, you know. So different types of cycling communities have different requirements, you know. So like the BMX and the downhill fellas, they don't use this discussion about the highway is completely irrelevant to them.
Yeah,
because,
not relevant.
You know, yeah, it's not relevant to them. It's not relevant to the foldies because the foldies, they know, you know, we don't do highways.
Yeah.
The mountain bike fellas, we don't do highways. You know, if anything, when we are on the road, it's more to get to the place where we want to actually do our cycling, which is off road. You know, and there is also a whole separate category of people who use cycling as a form of transportation.
Exactly.
From point A to point B. You know, so when we do the kind of thinking or approach that is a one size fits all, you're inevitably either going to alienate or going to punish a group that you never intended to because you were not aware they existed.
Yep.
You know, so when you deliver, you know, because like for example, when you build cycling lanes in Kuala Lumpur, it's not really meant to cater for people like Ramzul who are training for triathlon. You know, it's not. It doesn't allow you to go fast enough. You know, which is why they don't use it. And but to the people who have built it, who have spent the resources to build it, they get frustrated because the roadies don't use it.
Yeah.
You know? But they never ask the roadies, why don't you use it? Because I've cycled on the bike lanes in Kuala Lumpur. You can actually segue from the main road onto the curb because the bike lane goes onto the curb. The bike lane goes into the curb and back to the road.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a peculiar design that we don't know who they actually asked.
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose the engagement session that the ministry had like 3 days ago at the Youth and Sports Ministry, I think this was a very good first step in making sure that you understand the ecosystem of cyclists. You know, we are all not the same. You know, because even though Ramzul is a cyclist, I am a cyclist, we don't ride in the same circles. We don't ride at the same speed, definitely lah. We don't ride at the same speed, definitely. But we are both legitimate road users with a fair claim to the road, so to speak. You know, yeah.
On the point, Arif, I heard you mention about even earlier on that there was a meeting in the KBS, and I think even Ramzul was invited for that. I think it was held on Thursday, right? Yeah. Would you like to just, subject to whatever secrecy of the meeting, is there anything you can share with us?
It was, it was a very good meeting that was initiated actually by the Office of the Minister.
Kementerian Belia dan Sukan.
That's right. Because they wanted to understand the ecosystem, which is why I said it's a good first step, you know. So they invited everybody, and there is some seriousness when the chair of the meeting is the chief secretary to the ministry, the secretary general, you know, and the people from the minister's office was also there. There were representatives from the Ministry of Transport, from the Highway Authority, from the Road Transport Department, and a bunch of clubs, a bunch of businesses, you know, event organizers, etc. And it was a very good session in which both sides got to hear what the other side was actually thinking. You know, because sometimes that's when conflict comes into play, because when you don't know what is motivating the other side, you make your own conclusions as to why they are behaving that way, and more often than not, your conclusion is always negative. You know, you tend to project, oh, dia tak faham ataupun dia buat macam ini because dia berniat jahat. Padahal, you know, they have an intent, a good intent. You know, nobody wants cyclists to get hurt. But like I said, if you don't understand the ecosystem, it's very easy to take one segment and project that to the entire community. You know,
one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah, one size does not fit all. One size does not fit all. But once you understand that, oh, okay, there is some nuance to it, there is some layers to it, then I think we can start crafting better policies, better infrastructure, and we can start addressing specific areas which are specific problems for specific groups, rather than putting it as a one size fits all. You know, I was very heartened. The JPJ even said, you know, the regulation requiring that all bicycles must have brakes and lights date back all the way to 1959. But for the most part, cyclists have been using brakes and lights on their own accord, rather than from the knowledge that, oh, it's a requirement under the law. You know, and that to me is a disconnect, because it is not just a safety requirement, it's a legal requirement. You know, if you're cycling at night without a light at the front and the back, and it's a very specific red light at the back or a reflector at the back, a white light at the front or a reflector at the front, you know, it's a requirement under the law, under the road traffic rules of 1959. But we are not taught. You know, we do it from a common sense basis rather than you know, having a need to comply, which is why I think what Ramzul said, you know, is a very pertinent and very appropriate thing to do. That we need to educate people, both riders as well as drivers, that the whole thing is shared, and the keyword is shared. You know, it's not meant just for the motor vehicles, and it's just meant for the cyclists. You know,
I'm sure there is efforts to educate everybody. I've seen it before, but perhaps the effort can be a little bit more concerted, and mungkin kalau boleh lah lebih fokus terhadap keselamatan pengguna basikal, bukan sahaja keselamatan antara dua kereta ke dua motor, tapi juga pengguna lain seperti yang berjalan kaki dengan ambil basikal lah. We have to focus on that also lah. On the point, Ramzul, yes, I was about to ask you, Ramzul, about the maybe you can raise your point, but there's this Bukit Jelutong Cycling Club, which the president he put you want to comment on that?
Say again, can you repeat the question again?
Because there is a statement on the Bukit Jelutong Cycling Club, BJCC. I think it was made by their president, and he mentioned about, for example, the LLM rules, the 4 highways which are gazetted. He also mentioned about the concerns of the cyclists and all that. And I think you even shared that comments with Arif and I. What are your comments about that? The BJCC comments.
I think the comments are related to the uncertainties that we have in the cycling community. For example, like you said earlier, where can and or cannot we ride, we cycle, right? Because initially we heard that no, all highways, you can't cycle in all highways. That was the first news that I heard last time. And then people start asking, can we cycle at the motorcycle lane? Because if you go to GCE, the Guthrie Corridor Expressway, there's a really motorcycle lane that is quite very popular with the cyclists. And then for me personally, it's very safe actually. It's very safe because, to be honest, not many motorbikes use that motorcycle lane, right, on weekends, right? And then to me, it is safer even to cycle there if you compare to trunk roads in Janda Baik, example, right? So here lies the, where do you draw the line? Are you saying that all highways, including motorcycle lanes, are dangerous and therefore you cannot cycle there? What about the trunk roads? But you say that you allow to cycle in the trunk roads, but some trunk roads are really dangerous as well, right? So I think the comments, most of it, I think, centered around these uncertainties that we have currently, because we hear so many conflicting news coming in, conflicting statements given by authorities. But I have to say that the meeting the other day between the authorities and with the various groups of cyclists, right, to me is a very good first step. What we need to do, we need to raise the awareness in the community. And then when I say awareness, it is also inclusive of the authorities as well. Awareness for the authorities. They have to know, like Arif said, there are many types of cyclists, not only road cyclists. There are mountain bikers, BMX, recreational bicycle cyclists, and so on, right? We also need to raise awareness among the motorists. What to do when they are passing.
Exactly.
You should give a gap, but how big should the gap be? 1 meter, 1.5 meter. It's not properly mentioned anywhere, right? And then my earlier point, awareness among the cyclists themselves, right? So for me, awareness is very important. This is number one area that we should be doing now. And education. In order for you to raise awareness, you need education. When I say education, again, it's involving various parties, the authorities, the motorists, the general public, and also the cyclists as well. Right.
If I may add,
Sure.
Ramzul, the JPJ also, I would say they added to the confusion, but they were stating their perspective, their policy position, which is they will follow the road signs that have been put up. So at GCE, there is a road sign that specifically states bicycles use this lane. It was allowed. So people follow it. So when you have a policy pronouncement at the federal level saying one thing, but the localized road sign, and Joe, I was there when he made that statement. Cik Saleh made that statement of Cik Saleh of BJCC. He asked, which one is correct? Which one is correct? Do we wait for the other highways to be gazetted before it's that, or can you, by way of a statement alone, gazette all of the highways at one go without any other form of paperwork? Is this kind of lack of clarity that is actually making a lot of people confused, particularly the ones who are who are quite well read, who understand how the law works, because if you say, because the powers under Section 70 it's not a power that is exercised immediately. You don't exercise it by way of a media statement. It has to be gazetted. It has to be specified properly. So when you have a situation where I remember there was I think it was the police who said that, all of these mass cycling activities require a permit, but they did not specify what is the number of cyclists that will trigger this requirement for a permit. Are there specific roads that they can go to in order to get the permit? How long is the lead time before the permit? And which officer can approve? Is it an officer in the car? Is it their local balai? Is it the IPD? Is it the IPK? So when you make policy pronouncements, I think that's what a lot of people get frustrated. When we find out certain things are being changed or proposed to change, and you find out on the front page, nobody really asked us from the sport associations, from the advocacy associations, even at the club levels, nobody really asked. And all of a sudden, I think this blew up because of the Director General of the Malaysian Institute of Road Safety proposing that bicycles be licensed. riders be licensed. But
We're going to go to that.
yeah, I mean, I did say it in front of the in front of the whole meeting. I think the position of the National Cycling Federation is quite clear. We respect the authority and power of the government to make regulations. We accept that. We accept that. But at the same time, you must have an evidence base. You should demonstrate to cyclists that, okay, we're going to do this licensing. Because of this licensing, it's going to help improve your experience or make it safer. But that whole, what is the purpose of us doing this? That whole exercise was bypassed. They say we're going to do a license, but it didn't say how this license is actually going to improve or keep cyclists like myself or thousands of licenses.
Yeah, exactly.
How does it keep us safe? How does it keep us safe? Unless you start with education. And because I told them, I don't know about triathlons, but I've seen before, in the National Cycling Federation, we are actively promoting push bikes for kids as young as 2 or 3 years old, and they're already competing. And they have very, very enthusiastic parents who are putting kids on bikes at the age of 3, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're entering formal competitions. And we are enjoying the crap out of these competitions because they're like cuteness on bikes, and they're doing it. So at what point license? Because this is not like a car, a motor vehicle. It's very clear. It's a very expensive investment, and a person not in control can actually take a life. The bigger the vehicle gets, the more lives at stake if you don't license, if you don't train properly. But typically, the average injury suffered by a bike rider is not caused by that party, it's caused by themselves.
Yeah.
It's them having a cramp, it's them hitting a pothole, it's them hitting a fellow cyclist, So, but there's no evidence base. We don't keep track of the evidence, we don't keep track of the data, we don't keep track of the facts. And suddenly we have a policy pronouncement. So that kind of disconnect, I think frustrates a lot of cyclists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ramzul, I think Arif raised a very good issue here, which I was going to discuss later. The licensing of the bicycle. What is your personal view about this? Do you have any comment about it? The proposal?
I think cycling should be encouraged, not curtailed. Right?
Good answer.
I think, cycling is good for your health, it's good for the environment. You can even reduce traffic jam, right? It can be your last mile solution to our
everything,
problem, right? So I think any proposal that could result in people not wanting to cycling need to be reviewed and have proper engagement with the community. Right? We do not need any knee-jerk reaction to any particular issue. That's why I mentioned earlier, that was a very good first step by the authorities involving JKR, LLM, everybody there was, engaging the community. What does the community think about the current issue? I think this is a very good first step. That's why I think moving forward, we need many more engagement sessions, such as what happened the previous week, right? So it is very good. So to me, as I said, we should be encouraging people to cycle. If you put licensing requirement on the bike, people might not want to go on bikes anymore, keep driving to work, for example, don't want to go cycling for their health, and that kind of thing. So I do not think it is such a good idea, right? But for me, if I can just throw my idea, I think that those who buy bicycles should be given tax breaks, right? Those who buy bicycles should be given tax incentives, to encourage people, right?
I think that is it's about 300 ringgit a year, but there you go.
This will be the first price of the bike.
Let's hope somebody shares this with Tengku Zafrul. Budget 2021, here we come.
Our Tengku Zafrul is an Ironman and also a triathlete. So so please forward this video to him. I think we need tax incentives for the purchase of bikes to encourage more people to go cycling, to get involved in cycling. any types of bikes, right? Is it triathlon bikes, road bikes, hybrid bikes, mountain bikes, foldies, and so on. That is my idea. So really, I think we should be doing things to encourage cycling rather than curtailing them, right? That's my idea.
Just to make it
yes, Arif, go on.
Yeah, just to make it clear, I mean, the National Cycling Federation, we do run a licensing scheme, but that licensing scheme is more to do with UCI, an International Cycling Union requirement that all riders be registered. They want a standardized detail. So, so the licenses that we have, it has separate categories. You're either a rider, or you're either a technical official, or you're an organizer, because the UCI regulations state that anybody in a cycling race must be licensed. But that form of license, it's not a permission, and the licensing that we were talking about just now is getting government permission, which is exactly that for motor vehicles. If you're not licensed, then you
can't cycle.
You're committing an offense.
Which is
by,
wrong.
by operating a vehicle without a license. So that's not what we want. That's what we want to avoid. But if it's I shared with the meeting, Japan has a national registration scheme on their bikes. So that's all right. I don't think anybody is going to oppose a registration scheme because it doesn't involve government permission. So if you're just registering it for the purposes of establishing ownership, preventing theft, or disincentivizing thieves, etc., then I think it's a good idea. But again, it boils down to what's our end game? What's our end game? And the reading that I've had, based on the research that the National Cycling Federation has done, no country in the world has ever allowed. They've licensed it before. There are countries in the world that have done these licensing schemes before, but not a single one has retained it because the cost of retaining it tak berbaloi langsung with the potential hasil that you make. You just can't do it. You just can't. Because if I buy a small bike for my kids, it cannot possibly be that you charge me the same fee for when when Ramzul buys the bike that he does. For a proper athlete's bike, a Superman's bike. So when you charge a flat rate, you just cannot sustain it. It's just not sustainable. So to me, why bother?
Good point.
Just imagine the administrative costs or red tape that will be involved to register literally hundreds of thousands of bicycles.
And the road transport department works because when we pay for the lesen kenderaan motor, we pay it on an annual basis. We pay it on an annual basis, which allows them to have the kind of revenue, and they have the auctioning of the plate numbers, which allows that entire enforcement structure to survive and pay for itself. In fact, you may even have a surplus. But for the rest of us, it just doesn't work that way.
I agree with Arif. What you said just now on the voluntary registration, that one is a good idea because let people register voluntarily, and then that could also open new avenues. For example, allowing your bicycle to be insurance.
Exactly.
So I think it's a really good idea. Plus also establish ownership. That's why you voluntarily register your bike in a registry somewhere. It's a totally different approach to the whole idea, to the whole issue, right? It's not really the license, right? But it's on a voluntary basis. I like the concept.
That's number one. And number two, I also want to share how the UK does it. They have this concept. They have a non-profit. They have a charity called Bikeability Trust. The Bikeability Trust, they have an entire syllabus as to how kids should be trained on how to ride safely. So the bike. So it's a concept that's carried by both the British Cycling Federation as well as the other cycling advocacy groups in the UK. They also support this thing called bikeability. So it's a standardized way for you to teach children how to approach riding safely. So at least on our part, we have to do our part because the only formal teaching of cycling today that I understand, that I know of, are the Boy Scouts. The Pengakap have their compulsory cyclist badge when you're in primary school, and there is also a secondary school cyclist badge. And for them, they make it very clear. Okay, you need to know how to ride safely. You need to know how to handle the bike. You need to go on a long expedition with the bicycle. So other than that, I'm not aware of any other concerted or formal efforts to teach kids how to ride a bike. So maybe that should be something that we should also push, and in concert with the Ministry of Education, because as far as I believe it, it's a life skill. It's not just cycling is a life skill. It's not just about sport. It's not just about recreation. I think everybody should know how to ride a bike to save your life one fine day, But that's just me, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think both of you raised really very effective and legitimate points. And I'm personally not fond of the idea of licensing the bicycle, but since I'm the issue of regulation, I just share with you what we have observed so far. Of course, the law which governs any user on the road, particularly public road, is of course the Road Transport Act, 1987. Yep. And then when we go to the Act, it doesn't define a bicycle as a specific definition, but it does fall within the definition of vehicle. So that means any vehicle with a structure capable of moving or being moved, used for the conveyance of any person, is said to be a vehicle. So therefore, a bicycle falls within this definition. Then you look at section 70, is when you mentioned Arif, 770 of the Act. It says that the minister can make gazettes, certain rules pertaining to usage of the road.
Any roads, yes.
Yeah, and then from there we found this gazette, the highway code. We found the highway code, and particularly code 66, which I want to read out to everybody here. Code 66 states that number one, code 66 is about it used the word pedal cyclists. So it deals with pedal cyclists. And rule 66 says, and I read, always seek and use the safest route, which is what Ramzul just said. Keep out of heavy traffic as much as possible. Again, common sense. Avoid highways in particular and fast traffic in general. So there is a specific reference to non-highways. Then we went through, I found, for example, on a plus highway, they make it very clear that you can't cycle on a plus highway. Yeah. And I think the two bridge in Penang, you can't cycle there.
No.
Actually, the one they don't need to decide cycle in tunnel. But anyway, it is gazetted that you cannot cycle in smart tunnel. So these are so far what we know of the law. But moving forward, for the two of you, now that the two of you have actually very clearly set the tone and share with us basically both of you share your aspiration, what we should be, right? But moving forward, let's say we continue to have dialogues with KBS, Kementerian Belia dan Sukan, as they initiated on Thursday. What are the things you think we should continue taking effective and positive steps? Ramzul, maybe you can start with that. Some general comments of taking steps to solve this problem.
I think having the engagement is really the way forward, right? We need, like I said earlier, more engagements between authorities and the cycling community, right? And then as they come up with a solution or laws to govern the matter, we really need to put the cyclist safety as number one, as paramount. I would like to go back to the safety issue again. So in order to ensure the safety of the cyclists, we need the infrastructure to be there. We need better protection. Say that the cycling lanes that we discussed earlier in KL, we need better protection, right? We can't have open cycling lane and suddenly it goes into the pavement, that kind of thing. So perhaps I've seen in some of the overseas countries, the bicycle lanes are well protected.
Yes, yes.
And then at major junctions, I've seen in overseas, they even have a dedicated bridge for cyclists to that extent, right? So they really built the requirement of a cyclist into their road designs, right? So this is what I meant. We need a holistic approach in tackling the matter with the safety of the cyclists at the center of it. What we are doing is really to protect to minimize the risk of accidents and injuries to as low as reasonably possible. So the authorities also must play the role based on this concept.
Correct. Right? I like that. Very simple and pragmatic approach. Go on.
Yeah. And then as the community, we need to keep giving feedback to the government, to the authorities, right? What do we need? What is our requirement? Because they don't know. Without the engagement, they wouldn't have any idea what is our requirement, where do we like to cycle, how do we cycle, for example, right? So that's why I think awareness, right? Education is they are very important for both parties. Yeah, we need to continue giving the feedback, and again, centering on minimizing the risk of accidents and injuries for the cyclists. Yeah, that's what we really want to do.
Good point. We'll come back to you, Ramzul. What about Arif? From your perspective as a specific association for cycling, moving forward, how do you think we can find a roadmap towards solution?
Well, okay. To begin with, the roots of the existing associations of cycling, has always been in racing. Okay, it has always been about the sport of cycling. But like I said just now, we have two separate or rather multiple separate communities, distinct communities in cycling itself. So when we talk about cycling from a cycling association perspective, we are registered with the Commissioner of Sports, with the Sports Commissioner. So our focus tends very heavily to be towards the athletic side of things.
Correct.
When we're thinking, we are always thinking about the organized sport. We're thinking about how to make sure our athletes are properly supported when they train. When we talk about younger athletes, it's always about, okay, can these kids one day become national or state level athletes? Which means that there is a gap, for those who are using cycling as a commuting tool, or those who are using it purely as a recreation. That means like foldies, for example, the folding bikes. There's no sport based on folding bike. There's no sport based on folding bike, and cycling is quite complicated. Even at the Olympics, there are 4 different types of cycling: track cycling, road cycling, mountain bike, and BMX. So there's nuance even in the sport. So what more in the recreational side? What more when you talk about the people who are using cycling as a business, and it's starting now. The tours of Kuala Lumpur by bicycle. The people who are delivering food by bicycle, they're not using it for recreation. They're using it as a means of making some money, making a living. So to me, best case scenario, they require advocacy of their own, which is why I'm very pleased to note the existence of this organization called the Malaysian Bike Users Association, which had their inaugural annual meeting just like last week, and they're planning to call themselves Bike Friendly Malaysia moving forward. Okay, that's fantastic. But I think all of the other communities also need advocacy of their own, because from the athlete's perspective, from the sports perspective, we might be wearing blinkers of our own, because we're very focused on the sport side of things, because for example, Ramzul comes from an NSA, I come from an SSA, a state sport association, so it's advocacy for the recreational side that's missing, because they know better. They know better what it is that they do. These people who do foldies and BMX and all of these other things that have no sport behind it, So
I think having
multiple levels, I think the policies that we make can vastly improve, because let's say the safety for road and safety for mountain bike and safety for BMX is different types of safety, because you're doing it on different types of venues, you're doing it for different types of purposes. But above all, I do agree with Cik Ramzul that cycling is something very much to be encouraged. We have zero emissions, as a form of intervention for health. We make people, by seriously engaging in cycling, it makes you healthier, so it reduces your risk for disease over long term, and typically cycling is a social activity. Essentially, it's a social activity. It's very rarely you have people like me who like to go cycling by myself. In fact, it's dangerous, to go cycling by yourself. It's a social activity. So it helps build some kind of cohesion, and more often than not, when you're a cyclist, you view yourself as we are a tribe of cyclists. There's no such thing or Chinese cyclists, Malays, tak ada. Kita cyclists, we are one community. We are one community. Everybody's on a bike. I see anybody, we will angkat tangan, we will acknowledge the other. This is much more so than motorists, for example. So I'm very heartened to be part of that community.
Indeed.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a ongoing cycling expedition now from Tapah all the way up to Cameron Highlands and back to Tapah. My friends are on it. Some of them are on it. I just got a text. They said, "Bro, I can't watch your webinar. I just reached Tanah Rata." Good luck to you, bro. So yeah, you're spot on about the community and advocacy. I think that's a good way forward. Can I refer to a question by a gentleman? I think Adnan asked this question. Maybe the two of you can consider offering some comments. Given that the road infrastructure example in Kuala Lumpur is already so entrenched, would it be practically possible to alter roads so that the bicycle lanes and the main road can be physically separated? It's going to be a good question, sir. Maybe Ramzul, you want to try this first?
Yeah, I think obviously we also need to be realistic, right? I think like Anan here rightly said, some of the KL roads, they've been there for like years. So perhaps it's very difficult for the authorities to add additional lane just to accommodate cyclists. Okay. So this is why I think again, we really need to have more common sense here. Really emphasize on the safety when we ride to these areas. In terms of infrastructure, I do see that as a challenge for the authorities. I don't have the answer now, right? In how to incorporate the right infrastructure in those kind of areas where it is simply not possible to have more bike lanes. But what we can do, for example, have more, bike-free Sundays, right? So this is another way for us to rather than having a physical lane there and have to, spend more money to make dedicated bike lanes and so on. We should have more bike-free weekends. Rather than now, it's only once a month. Why not we do it every weekend, for example, right? So that's another way that we can encourage cycling and then get more people to be involved with cycling.
Totally agree. What about you, Arif? This idea to alter the roads is going to be tough. What's your comment, Arif?
Okay. First of all, we have two. It's two weekends in a month now. But of course, it hasn't been one for many months lah. Okay, let's hope and pray this COVID thing tides us over quickly, sooner rather than later. But for me, the Kuala Lumpur as a city is adaptable. The cycling lanes that we see today, the ones in blue that we see in KL today, right? That was created in conjunction with the World Urban Forum, which took place about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes, I remember that.
So and it was done quite quickly and quite efficiently when there is the political will to do it. So above all, it is about political will. Personally, when it comes to these kinds of things, when it comes to these kinds of infrastructure, I think if the political will is there, it can be done. But it really does depend on the quality of advice and the quality of data that is presented to the decision makers. I think they are very, very reasonable people, but we have to also accept that, like Ramzul said, the cost effectiveness of this, when we already have the lane from Mid Valley to Dataran Merdeka, when we have that particular lane, I don't know whether there's data in terms of how many people use it. So when we have these kinds of things, we have to support it with data in terms of the return on investment. So if we can get that data, it can inform future decisions. But right now, there's nobody doing the collection of the data. There's nobody sitting there and counting how many users, how many people congregate in KL for each car-free morning, or even if there is that data is not shared and that data is not escalated, And again, if you have multiple advocacies from all sides agitating for the same thing, we want a physically separated lane, even in cities where traditionally they have not been all that friendly to cyclists. Melbourne, in fact, 5 days ago unveiled a physically separated lane, that addressed the concerns of cyclists, to where they had to share the road. It was allocated for cyclists, tapi tak ada physical barrier. So now they upgraded it to put physical barriers. It worked. So to me, it just boils down to
the desire to get things done.
Political will. So maybe we can do like a political party bicycle or something like that, and advocate for this. One fine day, any party doing this, I definitely will be giving it some serious thought lah to give it.
Muda, we can add in a bicycle or something like that.
Bicycle or something like that lah. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Awesome.
To summarize today's discussion, I'm going to come back to the two of you. So far, the speakers have shared with us the view of the regulatory side. We also have views from the users, athletes like Ramzul, who gave us some very simple but very valuable tips on cycling. So those who are watching this at this moment, you can rewind later and watch the video. We've also gone through some of the law, what makes the law yes or no, when you can cycle. And Arif made it very clear that what we understand is you can cycle anywhere until the law says you cannot cycle. So that is where it is. And then we had a quick discussion about the proposal to license the bicycle. So I think all three speakers, the answer is no, we shouldn't do that. That seems to be the theme of the three of us. And of course, last 10 minutes, we were addressing some of the questions and addressing the rule side of it. So to summarize today, maybe I invite Ramzul first to summarize your thoughts before it's almost 3 o'clock. I want to release the two of you. Maybe you want to go cycling after this. Maybe Ramzul.
The weather
doesn't look good. The weather doesn't look good. Maybe your summary.
Yeah, I think when it comes to regulation on cycling laws, I think we need a holistic approach where everyone must get involved. Authorities, the general public, and the cyclists. While all this is happening at the moment, we are still at a very infant stage, right? We just started the very first engagement with the authorities and so on. What we can do as cyclists, right? Like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, we really need to focus on our own safety, right? Please look after your own safety. Look after the safety of others in the group with you, right? As I mentioned earlier, you need to lower the risk of injuries or of accidents to as low as reasonably possible when you go cycling. By all means, have blinkers at the back. Check your bikes before you ride. Have safety briefings, right? I work with an oil and gas company, and we do actually do safety moments before every meetings that we have, even for HR meetings or finance meeting, not related to safety at all, right? But I think this is what we can replicate in the community. Have that safety briefing before you start riding, just to remind everyone, including yourself, right, on the hazards of cycling, what the do's and the don'ts when you are cycling in a group, as a reminder to everyone. All right. Again, as we pass through a narrow road, please form a single lane. If you want to race with your friend, find somewhere really quiet. Do not do it in a public road where there's traffic and so on.
Yeah.
So I think again, please emphasize on safety whenever you are riding in your group. I think that is really my key message to everyone here.
Well said. Thank you, Ramzul. Arif, your summary, all yours.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I must say I agree with Ramzul, and in fact, I must qualify what you said just now. We can cycle anywhere until we are prohibited from cycling there, subject to it being safe. Subject to it being safe. And that is a paramount thing.
To correct me.
Yeah. So if it's not safe, just because you can do it doesn't make it a bright idea to go and do it. So we are the ones, that control where we go. But above all, other than it requiring a holistic approach, it requires also an evidence base. Everything we do, you must have the outcome that you want must be tied to something that you already know beforehand. So if you're doing it for the safety of cyclists, every initiative that the government undertakes, right, you have to show it to us. How does it end up making it safer for us? And having that clarity and taking away discretion, taking away personal interpretation, and sort of like using an evidence base, that's essentially what we want, making it clear, because as it is right now, like I said, I don't dispute the fact that LLM can issue pronouncements, the Bukit Aman JSPT, the Jabatan Siasatan dan Penguatkuasaan Trafik can issue pronouncements, but again, that's not what the law says. That's not what the law says. The law says another thing. So if we can make it clear, I do hope and I've seen the Pegawai Turus for traffic speak. He has a PhD and it's a superintendent. I forgot his name, but he seems like a super competent guy, and I really believe he's on our side. He's trying to facilitate as much as possible for the cyclists, and I'm super happy because of that. But at the same time, it's not enough that he alone understands that. Everybody else, we must do our part. Everybody must be advocating, and we must not give the authorities a reason to begin excluding us from the process. Which means when we give ideas, it has to be workable, and we have to begin policing ourselves. We cannot make ourselves a center of attention in the negative way, etc. So once everything works together, hopefully it will be when our kids grow up and cycle, it will be, we can look back and say, well, we were there when it started to get better lah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I think the two of you, thank you for your time. You could be anywhere else. In fact, you could be cycling now.
On a bike.
Yeah, thank you so much to sharing with me your 1 hour here. Can I invite everybody here to give these two a cyber round of applause? They have came prepared. They know the stuff.
Thank you.
I thank you for your time, for input. To end the thing, I hope the end game is that we acknowledge and recognize the legal rights of all road users, not just the car and the motorbike. And I think it's also time that cyclists must also balance that their right to cycle with the need for utter safety, very, very important. And the laws regulating this area may have to be refined to ensure that the road users, particularly cyclists, they know what they can do. At the moment, there's a bit of a loophole and a grey area. We don't know can or cannot. So that I hope will be the eventual end in the short term. And then long term, of course, I hope to have a real, proper, beautiful cycling lane all over Malaysia. That will be the long term one. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I'm going to end the broadcast now. To end the broadcast on Facebook, but hold on, don't go yet. So, everybody, goodbye, take care, and ride safely. Right? Bye-bye.
Thank you.